Have you ever taken a highway because it was said to be a scenic route? What if it was known for something a bit more sinister? In this episode, we discuss the first case to use DNA as evidence, and we find out what Route 40 and Route 13 have in common. It's time to get into it. It's the case of Steven Pennell, right now, on Love and Murder. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder, the weekly true crime podcast discussing relationships gone terribly wrong, where our new motto is...
You're either someone's last love or their first murder.
I am your host, Kai, along with my co-host, Rick.
Hello.
Tonight, well, I wasn't going to introduce you yet, but hello.
You just did.
Shut up. Anyways, tonight we have a special treat for y'all. A preview of a Patreon bonus episode. So the reason why we're doing this is you've heard previews of our Patreon before, and then those of you who are already in our Patreon, thank you very much. However, for those of you who are not in our Patreon before, the bonuses that you've heard are starring Kai, but now there's Rick. So let us get a bonus from our new host, Rick, and that's what we're doing tonight. This case was actually the first in the U.S. to use DNA as a legal evidence. Now, if you want 2 or more cases from us a week, then go ahead and subscribe to our Patreon using our summer sale to get half off, and we'll actually talk more about that later. Our show, if you don't remember, discusses true crime told in the form of a story with mystery, suspense, and just a little bit of humor sprinkled on top, but never at the expense of the victim, as I have to say every week. As you're listening to our podcast on whatever platform you're on, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. Also, here's your weekly reminder to listen to our last episode, A Case of Murder and Mayhem. Oh my God, so much murder and mayhem. A case where the law was just a suggestion. It's episode 62, and it's the case of Randy Gay. Also in our Patreon, our last bonus episode, we discussed a delusional kid who thought women owed him everything in the case of Elliot Rogers. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Rick.
So in November of 1987, a body was found partially nude with its hands tied together with tape and legs spread apart. During the investigation, police found no evidence of sexual abuse. However, there was evidence to support that the body had been severely abused, including blunt strikes to the head. It was noted that these strikes happened before death, and that strangulation was the cause of death. The body was identified as 23-year-old Shirley Anna Ellis, who had left the Wilmington Hospital where she worked as a nurse helping AIDS patients. The last night she was seen, on November 29th, 1987, she had reportedly called a ride home.
So before you move on, she was beaten in the head before she was strangled.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I don't know about you, Kai, but I found things saying she was strangled with a piece of string, a rope. Some accounts said possibly just bare hands. There wasn't anything congruent on what was used, but they do know that she was indeed suffocated to death.
Wow.
Savage. So after this body was found, 3 more came to light. All of them had been brutally beaten and horribly tortured. The second body was found 6:30 a.m. on June 28, 1988, by some construction workers at their job site, where they were building the Fox Run apartment complex. Can you imagine living somewhere and finding out that someone buried a dead body there? That sounds awful.
I was just about to say, so everyone who lives in a Fox Run apartment complex, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, the body was completely naked, but again, there wasn't any evidence of sexual assault. This body was also killed by strangulation after receiving blows to the head.
Wow. I'm beginning to see like an MO here.
You ain't the only one. This body was reportedly covered in blue fibers like a piece of material, and this body was identified as 31-year-old Catherine DeMoro, who was spotted walking down Route 40 between the hours of 11 p.m. and midnight.
So the only difference between this body and the previous body is they actually left evidence on this body. So blue fibers that could have been like a towel, shirt, rug, like anything like that. So maybe with this body, the person strangled her with maybe a blue rope or something, or a blue towel or something.
You're on to something, but you're going in the right direction. You just haven't gotten to the right destination yet. But we'll pick up on the blue fibers later, though. It becomes a very important part. So a third body was Margaret Lynn Finner. She was said to have disappeared on August 22nd, 1988. She was a sex worker, and multiple witnesses claimed that they saw her get into a blue Ford being driven by a white male, and this occurred near Route 13. 3 months later, her body was found near the Chesapeake, Delaware Canal. They needed to use dental records in order to identify her because the body was so badly decomposed. We see that a lot here on LM, a body being so badly decomposed that the only way to know who it is was dental records. I can imagine being the one that found that. That's making me squeamish just thinking about it.
It was so decomposed because it was possibly in the river this whole time, right?
That's true too. Like the salt in the water, the bacteria in the water, anything that you're exposed to anything that you get exposed to in nature can accelerate decomposition. So,
and isn't it that if it's in water, the body does bloat up?
Typically,
also?
Yeah. It gets what's called waterlogged, where you get a lot of water into a space and it puffs out. Yeah. And the thing what's even more disturbing, not only did they have to use dental records to identify her, she was so badly decomposed that they couldn't really figure out what the cause of death was. The only thing they could surmise was that the body was clearly tortured. So a little side note too, we mentioned Route 13. Route 13 is in an area where it's in Newcastle, Delaware, and in this particular area, Route 13 splits off, and that part that splits off is Route 40. Now, Route 40 starts, like I said, in Newcastle, Delaware. It goes well into Maryland and even beyond, so it's a pretty big highway, as is Route 13, just for context later.
So, question. So, does Route 13... So you have to exit Route 13 to get to 40, and then Route 13 continues on, and then now if you exit, you're on 40? Or is it that Route 13 turns into 40?
So if you look at it on a map, if you look at pictures of how it's laid out, if you're on Route 13 coming out of Wilmington, Delaware, if you're on the right side of Route 13, and you stay on the right two lanes, they veer off and become Route 40. So when I say Route 13 splits off, it literally becomes a fork. And then that right side of the fork is now 40.
Okay, I understand.
So Route 13 continues on in a different direction, but it doesn't stop existing once 40 begins.
Gotcha.
So like we said, the third body was so decomposed they couldn't really tell what had happened to her. But the first two murders were so very similar. Police came to the conclusion that there was more than likely a serial killer operating near Route 40. The state and county police were collaborating with FBI to identify and hunt down potential suspects. Some reports said that they formed a task force of 60 or more officers. Other reports said over 100 officers. So I guess we're going to have to say 60 to 100 or more officers.
I'm not trying to laugh at this, but okay. I guess because the state is so small, they got everybody. They got 60 to 100 officers to look for one person.
I think Delaware, Vermont, and New Hampshire are the smallest states. Delaware might be the smallest just by a little bit. But I'm surprised they even had 100 officers in total there. I mean,
but that's you got together the entire Delaware police force.
After
not even
only,
just the count.
They can really,
after only 3 murders.
Yeah.
And that, again, not trying to make light of that, but I've never heard of something like that. Have you?
They can really only tie together the first two as well because, like we said, they couldn't identify what exactly happened to the third victim. She was so, rotted and decomposed.
Right.
But as soon as they see 2 similar killings in the span of, what was it, a month? They're like, oh my god, serial killer. It's is there nothing else going on in this?
I mean...
Part of me wants to say there's nothing else going on in the state, but then again, we have plenty of stories where law enforcement just did not act quick enough and more chaos ensued.
And now we're making fun of them that they acted.
Yeah, so on one hand, I'm like, okay. They jumped on it and got the job done. On the other hand, this never happens. So what's
But
the
like, what
outlier
about
here?
other crime that's going on? Like, you pulled everybody off other crime to focus on 80, 60 to okay. All right, I
Yeah, I
digress.
mean,
Continue.
like through their knowledge and experience with serial killers, and the fact that they were about to spend almost $1 million on this case.
Wow.
The FBI, they were working to make a really accurate psychological profile of this guy.
Look, these are the people we need on every case. Like, seriously. They stopped everything they were doing and was like, get to it now. We need to know who's doing this so we can stop it in its tracks.
Yeah, grab your handcuffs, grab your gun, grab your badge, put down the fucking donut, and come with me. It's like, oh, okay, all right, what's going on? It's like every single county was there. On September 14th, 1998, one of the
88.
undercover... That's what I said.
You said 98.
I did not.
You did.
I did not. I am gonna cut this part out and send it to you and be like, look, I said 88. So
and
anyway,
if you said 98, then what?
Well, then I'm wrong. But I didn't. So I'm not.
Okay.
On September 14th, 1988, an undercover police officer by the name of Renee Tashner was posing as a sex worker. She was part of the 60 to 100 or more task force. So while she was undercover working, she noticed that a blue Ford had passed by her area about 7 times within a span of only 20 minutes. Once she noticed this, she strategically, on purpose, moved to a more secluded area. And that's a risk right there. I would not have done that, but this woman was brave. Once she did this, when she was secluded, the suspected vehicle almost immediately pulled up next to her. The driver basically tried to convince her to get into his car, but Renee used the excuse that she was too tired. And while this was happening, he pulled up, the door opened, she leaned in, was talking to him. While he was trying to solicit her, Renee actually reached into the car and pulled out a piece of the blue carpet that was inside the car. She was also, aware enough to take note of his license plate when he drove away. And that's a factor that really brings this case home. Running the license plate identified the owner.
Cliffhanger Kai's back from vacation. Here's your reminder to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review on the platform of your choice. Also, come on over and join us at our exclusive L&M community on Patreon at www.patreon.com/love-and-murder. Once you become a subscriber, you get access to commercial-free episodes so you don't have to listen to this particular interruption, early releases, Crazy Crime Corner, Love Obsessions, Serial Killer Corner, getting to know the hosts, behind the scene, and so much more. We have so much fun over there, so come on and join for only $5 a month during the final days of our summer sale, ending on the 31st, which is in a couple days. You do not want to miss out. www.patreon.com/love-and-murder. If you want the direct link to the exact sale, you can just click on the link in the show notes below. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. We now resume our regularly scheduled program.
As Steven Brian Pennell.
Now, I want to point out that you said that, she moved to a more strategic location where it was secluded and you wouldn't have done that. However, maybe she did that because she was being monitored. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think it was...
When you're undercover, it's pretty common to have officers nearby, but like for me, I would still be a little concerned that wouldn't be enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, even with everything considered, I still think it's impressive that she took that chance and said, because he could have grabbed her, drove
could have,
off.
but then she probably had her gun, pepper spray, a taser. She was probably ready,
Yeah,
I mean, she's not going to take an uncalculated risk. You know what I'm saying? So she was probably ready.
Yeah, so that's true. We're never going to know all the details, so you're probably right. But in regards to the suspect, Steven Brian Pennell, they found out he was born November 22nd, 1957. There isn't a whole lot about his early life, but by the time we're picking up his story, which, if you haven't figured out, is right now, at this point in the story, he's a 32-year-old electrician. He's married to a woman by the name of Vera Catherine Pennell, and he was the father of 2 children. And one of the craziest parts about the story, Kai, to me, is prior to this, he had no criminal record to speak of. To the law, in their eyes, he was completely clean. It's weird. Like this, you'll learn to find out that this kind of came out of nowhere for him. So on September 16th, 2 days after Renee encountered him, a local sex worker by the name of Michelle Gordon disappeared. Route 40 was a pretty frequent spot for her because she was a sex worker and that was where she did her routine. And witnesses claim that they saw her entering you guessed it, a blue Ford. On September 20th, her body was found in the rocks of the Chesapeake, Delaware Canal. When they studied her body, they found cocaine in her system, and the evidence pointed that basically the cocaine made her heart stop when she took it. This kind of implied to them that she was drugged and she died before anything else could happen to her, because that was the only condition they found her in. It was just her body with cocaine in the system. Her heart had stopped. So I'm thinking, he tried to capture her by drugging her with cocaine. It was too much. She essentially OD'd, was forced to OD, and then she, maybe, I don't want to, belittle what happened to her, like you said, but it sounds like she got kind of lucky.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not that she was lucky that he took her and everything, but she wasn't tortured and everything like that. But so what I'm starting to pick up is that he started just grabbing whoever.
Mm-hmm.
That was because the first woman worked in a hospital. The second woman, what was she doing? Okay,
she was just walking down Route 40, minding her own business. I guess maybe she was walking home or.
Yeah, and then he started in on the sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I guess maybe he found that they were easier maybe to pick off?
That's the thing, too. I don't know about every single one of them, but a lot of the times, sex workers, they're down on their luck. They're just trying to make money. Maybe a lot of them aren't in touch with their family, or maybe they're homeless. So, a lot of times with the sex worker, if they go missing or something happens to them and you never find them again, it usually takes a while to realize, one, they're missing, and two, who they're connected to. So
I don't think he was going that far in his thinking. I think it's just...
No, but...
It was just they were easier in terms of they're more secluded because to get... What is it? Is it their John? They're the John, right? If you're picking them up, that's the John, right?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Either way, to get their client, I don't know what the terminology is, but to get their client, they usually veer away from the girls so that they could easily attract the client. Because if they're clumped together, then they feel like it's competition.
You mean like the harem of girls who are sex workers together?
Yeah, if they're on the corner together or whatever, they probably if they see someone coming, they probably separate so that it makes it some people are uncomfortable doing it, so they don't want to do it while everybody's looking. So that makes it easier for him to get one girl alone and stay away from a bunch of witnesses.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
I see what you're saying. It's a lot easier to get them to go in his car because what they're doing kind of requires them to go with him somewhere.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. That does make perfect sense. I do agree. If he was going to pick somebody, I think you're right. I think this was probably his first and best choice. I don't say best as in he did a good thing. I mean, for his scenario in his own head.
What he was thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So, another victim, 26-year-old Kathleen Ann Meyer, she disappeared September 23rd. Police officers actually saw her entering Pennell's car at 9:30 p.m. on Route 40. Her body was never found. How did these people not respond when they saw her getting in this car? I have no idea.
There's 100 people, and you just watched her get in the car?
Well, they say there's 100 people about, maybe. They don't say what each... I'm not assuming that they had literally 100 officers all along Route 40, because some of them are also FBI profilers, too. Some of them were state police, some of them were county police. It's possible that some of those officers were... looking into tips or calls or analyzing evidence. Just because they say there's 100 officers, that doesn't mean they're all out there boots on the ground. Some of them were probably higher-ups with different jobs to do in different roles.
So you see a person entering a car that matches what y'all are looking for. Okay. Anyways.
It's odd, too, because at this point, they saw her go into the car, they wrote down the license plate number, and, they confirmed it belonged to him. So there was no question that it was him, and that her body was... Maybe because the body never showed up, they couldn't tie anything to him, but then again, if you're the last person that saw her, you'd think they would question him about, hey, we can't find Mrs. Myers, so we saw her get in your car. I think they would at least try to question him, unless they were trying to play a long game. What do you think, Kai?
I mean, that's what I would think because they matched the number and I don't know. It was a person of suspect because of the blue rug, because of how he approached the undercover officer. This is a person of suspect. So if it was me and I saw this woman enter this car, I'm at least going to stop and make my presence known. I don't know. If they were playing the long game, this was a terrible way
I agree.
to do it.
And, like, if I'm a cop, I'm thinking, if I suspect that you're about to do some foul play, I would at least walk over and be like, hey, sir, have you seen this man? He's got, like, a weird hat and a long trench coat. He got away and,
Would you like to buy some cookies?
I'd at least do something to kind of, like, throw him off his trail, I'd at least do something to, like, throw him off his rhythm or interrupt what he's about to do so that he knows I'm around. I would do something. I would do more than what they did, apparently. Yeah. But then again, we don't know all the details. We'll never know the whole story. But
yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was like nothing he could do. I have no idea. So
it blows my mind even more because by this point, the task force, they were essentially monitoring his every move. Renee, the officer.
Well, that makes it worse.
There was a point where Officer Tashner, Renee, the undercover sex worker, she sat next to him at a Moody Blues concert, and she recalled, apparently it's been reported, she recalled a heartbreaking encounter with his daughter, who approached the officer during a stakeout and asked for a donation to a school fundraiser. Do you want to read the quote that we have, Kai?
Yeah. So, I put on my voices. Quote, she was a kid, and you never want any child to experience what's happening. End quote.
So, Public Prosecutor Charles Obery approved a search warrant to investigate his Ford. Now, Steven, he had gotten pulled over for a routine traffic violation, and then they immediately took him to court to pay his ticket. And, little known fact, this is actually a barely used legal method for police to detain you when you're a suspect. Yeah.
Wow.
So, at this point, they're getting crafty with him.
So, okay. So, she got the... Oh, no. Okay. I was going to say, she got the blue fibers. What did they do with it? Okay, so they matched it to the other victim to see if it was the same one. But how come it took so long to be able to get the truck?
That I don't know. The only thing I can think of is...
Because when they saw the fifth victim get into the car, that would have been a perfect time to say, hey, I'm pulling you over for a routine traffic violation.
Well, here's the thing, too. I'm going to look this up. No, I'm the one narrating. You look this up. Is sex work legal in Delaware? Or has it ever been legal in Delaware?
According to this legal system, let's see, is sex...
Because I know it's legal in places like Las Vegas, but that city is crazy anyway. No offense to our Las Vegas fans. Shout out to the Las Vegas fans. Spread the love. Like they do in Las Vegas. Oh! Anyway.
What in the world?
I'm vamping while you look this up.
The solicitation of prostitution, the act of seeking sexual services for hire, is illegal in Delaware.
Yeah, they could have legally said to him, hey, this woman is a known sex worker, and you're obviously about to solicit her for the service. We're arresting you or detaining you. They could have used that to their advantage. I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, because both the prostitute and the prostitute's customer can be prosecuted.
Not to mention the fact that you literally had an officer undercover as a sex worker, and he was trying to solicit her. She had proof, evidence. She had the experience of him breaking the law in that instance. Again, I have no idea why they didn't pursue that earlier.
Yeah, that would have been a great time to do that. Not wait for whatever. That would have been a great time to do that routine, quote-unquote, traffic stop, pulling him over because of this, take him to jail for 24 hours while they tested his truck.
I don't know if they saw him perform a traffic violation or if they bluffed their way and said to him, oh, you know. No,
because as you said, it's a legal method for people, for police to detain a suspect, which means that they found something like your light was out or you had hanging from your rearview mirror, something. You know what I'm saying? Something that they could pull him over for. That was just like,
it's even worse that they could have pinned him down for the sex worker soliciting, but instead they waited for him to just randomly commit a traffic violation to pull him over. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's...
Which is what I'm saying. Why have like 60 to 100 people if you're going to wait for the fifth victim where you can't even find the body?
They all kicked in a high gear to get together and plan on taking him down, but then when it came to actually taking him down, there was like a really slow burn to it or something. That doesn't make any sense, but then again, I'm not a cop. So, when they took his vehicle after the traffic violation, they found prints in the vehicle that matched up with the victims. And Kai, here's the crazy thing. They found the exact same tape that was used on Shirley Anna Ellis, and they also found a quote-unquote torture kit.
Wow.
What was in this torture kit, you ask? I'm glad you asked.
Yes, what was in this torture kit,
The torture
Rick?
kit included needles, knives, whips, pliers, and handcuffs.
Wow, so now I don't even want to know when they said the body has been tortured, what they were referring to.
I don't even want to think about it. And after a few months of around-the-clock surveillance...
Where they let a fifth victim get murdered.
After months of around-the-clock surveillance, he was arrested on November 29th, 1988. 1 entire year after the first victim was found.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like they pulled every single resource they had. You know, they weren't wasting time eating donuts. They weren't, wasting time, quote-unquote, wasting time on other cases. They came together as this huge group, and and they had all this going on. They saw all this happening, and it still took them 1 year and 5 victims to actually nail the guy down.
1 year after the first victim and 2 months after the last victim.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't have happened.
Yeah. Now, Steven was charged with the murders of Ellis, DeMoro, and Gordon, and on November 23rd, 1989, he was convicted of murdering DeMoro and Ellis. He, at this point, was still trying to maintain his innocence.
So
here's the funny thing, Kai.
He was saying he was innocent, even with all that evidence?
Yep.
Wow.
But it gets even better. He was maintaining his innocence, but he asked for the death penalty. He supposedly wanted to spare his family any further agony of him being in jail and media, I guess.
Agony of him being in jail and media, not the agony of him doing this stuff? And you want to spare your family, but screw their family?
Yeah, you murdered 5 people, and now their families and friends have to deal with that, and you're worried about your own family. You should have thought about it before you did any of this.
I mean...
And that makes you wonder, too, like, did he think he was never going to get caught? I don't know.
Yeah.
But, also, too, with the lack of evidence, he wasn't convicted of Michelle Gordon's murder.
Michelle Gordon, she's the one that wasn't found, right?
Yeah, Michelle Gordon, she was the one who was drugged and had the reaction to the cocaine. So, from their point of view, when they found her, there wasn't really anything linking her to the previous suspects. Like, there wasn't any signs of head trauma, there wasn't any signs of strangulation. They could just barely suspect that it was him, but they couldn't really pin it down legally sufficiently.
Okay.
However, for the 2 charges that he was convicted of, he was suggested to have 2 life sentences by the jury. And Steven's attorney tried to appeal the decision,
of course,
by claiming that the carpet sample from his car was obtained illegally.
It was obtained and it matched. You're really trying to argue this?
Yeah, he was trying to say, I guess they didn't have a warrant or a reason to search his car.
Who the hell cares?
Apparently, Judge Richard Gibelline had to dismiss these allegations, and he actually counteracted that the carpet was visible as soon as Steven's door to his car was opened, and he engaged Officer Renee.
Truth. He invited her in, so that wasn't obtained illegally because he invited her in.
Yeah, she was sitting in front of the car with the door open. I imagine she was leaning in, because she had to speak to him while he's on the driver's side. That carpet was within reach. It was within view. She could see it, and the fact that they found blue fibers on one of the victims, and this dude that they suspect just happens to have blue carpet in his car, that to me is reason enough. And like I said, the judge, Richard Gibelline, he dismissed it because of all those reasons. Thankfully. Fortunately. Oh, in fact, the judge, he ended up consulting numerous experts. I couldn't find an exact number, but from what I've read, he consulted a lot of people to verify the results that they found on these fibers. And it's because of this that they were also able to convict him of Gordon and Myers' murders, because they found DNA traces of them in his car with those blue fibers.
Good.
Yeah. And it was because of this, you know, the lawyer kind of contested, they got it illegally, and then that created the domino effect where they looked at the evidence more closely to see how legitimate it was, ended up linking him to the stuff they couldn't link him to. So now Steven, he's probably not the happiest guy in the world right now. Adding that to it, he ended up dismissing his lawyer because of it. And he decided to represent himself, like a lot of these people do.
Of course he did.
And
of course he did, because he went to law school.
I mean, the court approved the decision, and then Steven pleaded, what do you think, Kai?
I mean, of course, not guilty.
No. Well, actually, yes.
Oh.
But
wait.
He was still pleading for the death penalty.
So he said he's still saying he's innocent, but he's still saying kill me, though?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The details in this are a little murky, but I've seen reports that he claimed because the Constitution contains a verse from the Hebrew Bible, he used that as, you know, due to his beliefs, he figured that once 2 witnesses were able to testify against him, he deserved to be killed for what he had done. But it's like, you're trying to say you maintain your innocence, but then you're saying, people saw me do it, therefore I deserve death. Like, I don't know what to think of that. So, he went even further down that rabbit hole to explain himself. But on October 31st...
And this was...
Go ahead.
This was him representing himself instead of just letting the lawyer represent him. Okay, continue.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it?
No.
So on October 31st, 1991, he was sentenced to death. There was a hearing held with the Supreme Court. For those of you who don't know, in certain states, Delaware included apparently, whenever you get sentenced to death, there has to be an additional hearing to verify, you know, the reasoning and the sentencing and so on and so forth. So the hearing was held with the Supreme Court on February 11th, 1992, and Pennell was still demanding the death penalty. He wouldn't speak about the murders in first person. He would only speak about them in third person. And
well, I mean, that's how you maintain your innocence. You speak, you say, you know...
Yeah, I know exactly what happened, but...
Steven strangled Mary, but Steven is innocent because Steven...
I did see that he wouldn't say Steven killed this woman, he would say the murderer killed this woman. He said the murderer enjoyed the process of what happened, but did not enjoy the murders themselves. And fun fact, Steven was the first person to ever represent himself in front of the Supreme Court.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So this guy is... Like, what is his angle here? He's being very bold by representing himself and just being like, I didn't do it, but I deserve to be punished, like, the most extreme way possible. And then he goes to the Supreme Court, like the highest court of all courts. He goes to them and just says the same exact thing with no attorney present. He has... I don't know what he's doing, to be honest with you.
I'm at a loss. I have no clue. I guess he felt that he could represent himself better than his attorney because at the first appeal, the attorney didn't get it approved. So I guess he was like, screw that, I'll do this myself then.
That's possible too. And maybe he didn't want... Because again, we said the thing about him being worried about his family going through agony. I wonder if he, you know, kicked his lawyer to the curb just so he could get straight to the point and have them kill him. But from where I'm standing...
Well, if that's the case, then you should have pled guilty.
Yeah, from where I'm standing, he just made everything more complicated and took up more time.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah, and at this point, after he spoke to the Supreme Court and, you know, he again pleaded for the death penalty, his execution was scheduled for March 14th, 1992. So about a month later after this court hearing is when they had it scheduled. During the last 2 days before his scheduled execution, his wife Kathy made desperate efforts to obtain a stay, arguing that her husband's outlook proved that he was mentally incompetent. I kind of see where she's coming from, but...
No.
I mean...
No.
What do you mean?
I don't see where she's coming from at all. Your husband is clearly guilty of killing 5 people. All the evidence proves it. There's no question. And you're just like, hey, let's not do this.
Well, she reasoned he was mentally incompetent. If you're sitting there saying, I didn't do it, but I deserved the death penalty, that sounds pretty incompetent to me.
Okay. Again,
we don't know all the facts. We don't know every single little detail. But this guy, maybe he was both mentally incompetent and a piece of work at the same time.
Okay. Well, let's see what everyone else says. Go ahead.
In another strange twist, Widener University law professor Lawrence Hammermesh, a member of the ACLU board, he agreed to represent Kathy.
Wow.
An expert in the corporate
Maybe
arena.
They know something we don't know.
Maybe, but as we're about to get into, he was an expert in the corporate arena.
Wait, he was a corporate lawyer?
He had never handled a criminal case before this.
What the? Okay.
He said, and I quote, "I think I did the best I could," is what he says now. And then he went on to say, "I had no death penalty experience, and the state had pulled out all the stops because of the severity of the crimes." End quote.
That just doesn't make sense. You're a corporate lawyer. You're not a criminal lawyer. Okay, so he decides to represent himself. Then his wife tries to get a stay. Then a corporate lawyer tries to defend. What's going on?
Do you guys see what you're missing when you're not representing us on Patreon? You could be getting additional episodes like this every week with all these crazy cases. He essentially challenged a Superior Court psychiatrist evaluation, and he declared...
A corporate lawyer. Okay, continue.
Yeah, the Superior Court psychiatric evaluation declared that Steven was competent enough to understand the charges and to challenge them himself. The attorney supposedly alleged the review was neither thorough nor comprehensive and that time was needed for a more, quote-unquote, complete evaluation.
You're a corporate lawyer, sir.
Yeah, I don't use this phrase very often, but it sounds to me like he's talking out of his ass.
I completely agree. He's trying to buy time. That's all that is.
Yeah, well, the judge said, "Fuck that, go rot." And the state and federal courts basically turned all this down. You know, they said, no, we have what we need. We've proven that this is how it should be. They gave him the death penalty.
Dude, let me reiterate the evidence. The fibers, straight from his truck. The torture kit, which chronicled everything that was used on the victims. The freaking 5th victim who entered his car was never seen again. Then, wasn't there like fingerprints and stuff like that in his car of all the victims?
Yes.
Well, what the... I mean, I'm with the judge. Rot!
At 9 o'clock on March 15th, the United States Supreme Court issued the final rejection of Kathy's petition. At 9:49 p.m., Steven was executed by lethal injection inside the prison's trailer. The trailer was essentially modified to be divided into like a glass enclosed death chamber, and it had adjoining rooms for witnesses.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and supposedly, for some reason, they had him strapped down to a vinyl-covered gurney. I don't know why the vinyl, but whatever.
Well, because he might throw up, bodily fluids, all of that stuff, and they have him strapped down to prevent them from, like, of course, you're going to fight or flight. You're going to fight, you know? So that's why. Well,
Kai, if he deserved the death penalty like he said, why would he fight it?
I mean, natural response of your body. Most people don't have... They're not going to just sit there and let the pain take them over of a lethal injection. Or you never know if he's scared of injections. You don't know.
Well, according to the reports, he was pretty somber. He was literally asked if he had any last words during this time. The only thing he did was open his eyes and shake his head no.
Oh, wow.
So the technicians began injecting him with the lethal drugs. And after a little while, they closed the curtain, the death chamber, and over an intercom announced that Steven was dead.
Wow.
Marlene Sim, the mother of Michelle Gordon, she was among the crowd of 40 death penalty supporters and opponents, and she said that she was pleased by the execution. Steven Brian Pennell was the first execution in Delaware in 46 years.
Wow.
And he was the 165th execution in the United States after the death penalty had been reinstated in 1976.
That's such a short time.
It is.
165 people?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. At this point, Kai, I'm wondering, why does a 31-year-old married father of two just snap and go on a killing spree? You know, like, why did he act all crazy in court? Why was he trying to say he was innocent despite 100% of the evidence pointing to him? He represented himself, which a lot of these criminals tend to do, apparently. And despite saying he was innocent, he was requesting the death penalty. Again, I'm at a loss for words.
That does make sense now with all these questions. That does make sense because usually the people who represent themselves are bona fide narcissists. It didn't seem like he was like that. And yeah, why did he all of a sudden, like he's in his 30s and he just all of a sudden becomes a serial killer when he had no prior record?
Nope.
Usually all of our serial killers have a prior record, like something happened to them when they were little, but we have nothing. It's just like he was just normal. And then one day he was like, you know what? He just got up from bed one day and he was like, you know what? Today's the day.
Yeah, a lot of the times, with cases like Elliot Rodger, go to our Patreon and check that one out, you can begin to see glimpses of their personality coming through, and you can kind of piece together how they got to where they are now. With Steven, again, he had no prior record, he had no misdemeanors, he had a clean slate, and then all this happened, and he just went off the deep end.
That's freaking crazy. I really wish we could have more information as to why this happened. But I mean, I guess he took it to his grave.
Apparently so. We have another quote here. Would you like to do us the honors, Kai?
To this day, I want to know why. All of us involved want to understand it better. Typically, there's some horrifying event in the life of a serial killer that explains how they became sociopaths. But in the Pennell case, we couldn't get it at all. That's the lingering mystery. Why?
Steven's attorney said, quote, "His acts were unspeakable, but it's hard to connect the Steven Pennell I got to know with the person who committed these horrific crimes. The psychiatric evaluations never diagnosed him with any mental health issues." End quote.
Are you kidding me? So just because this guy acted nice, you're like, I can't see that he's a murderer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And with this case, people were still wondering about it to the point that in 1991, a psychiatric evaluation was submitted to the Delaware Supreme Court, and it actually did clear him of depression, paranoia, and psychosis, and it described him as, quote, pleasant, attractive, friendly, who related well to the examiner. So like they're still all the way to 1991, they're still trying to figure out why, and still they're coming back just with questions.
Yeah, it sounds like something that we're never going to really have the answer to.
That's, the definition of insanity, I guess?
Yeah, and because of all this, if you haven't figured it out yet, Steven Brian Pennell essentially went down in history as the Route 40 killer, aka the Route 13 killer due to their close proximity, or aka the corridor killer. And
why the corridor?
To be honest, I don't know. Like I said earlier, it makes sense that they would call him either the Route 40 killer or the Route 13 killer because 13 and 40 are connected. Depending on where he committed these crimes, he could have been near both or one of them more than the other, even though he was seen mainly on Route 40. I think that's why he's mainly called the Route 40 killer. Route 13 is understandable. The corridor killer, though? I don't know. I thought maybe corridor. I don't know.
Maybe one of those highways are referred to as the corridor. Like how in PA 476 is referred to as the Blue Route. Maybe Highway 13, for instance.
During my research, I figured out that Route 40 is also called Pulaski Highway. I didn't see a name for Route 13 though. And a corridor, that's part of a building, right? Like the corridor of the.
Yeah. It's like a hallway.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe the highways are those highways narrow or are they big highways?
Well, 13 before it splits off into 40, it's got 4 lanes on both sides.
No, that's a big highway. So I don't know.
When it splits off into 40 though, it's 2 lanes on both sides, and so is 40.
I mean, that's not a teeny itty bitty highway. So still. I don't know.
Kai, I wonder if, because he was picking up sex workers, I wonder if they're referring to corridors as like the alleyways that the sex workers worked in. Maybe that's like a part of the superstition that was going around.
Like in California, they have like Skid Row and stuff like that. Maybe that area where the sex workers was called the corridor.
Maybe. Oh yeah, if he did this over there, he'd be called the Skid Row Killer, I guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, well, that makes more sense.
Well, yeah,
So
that's the Route 40 killer.
that's insane. So what did y'all think about this episode? Have you heard of this case before? Because I haven't heard of the Route 40 killer. Let us know in the comments below. We definitely want to hear what y'all have to say about this. Anybody from Delaware, have you lived in those apartments? Have you heard about the Route 40 killer? I definitely want to know, so let us know in the comments below. Now, if you like this episode, then head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and rate us 5 stars. You can also download Good Pods and rate us on there too. You can say whatever you want in the description, but what it does is help bring us up in the chart so others can find us just like you did. Do not forget to visit us on Patreon to become an exclusive member of the L&M community. You get early release, commercial-free, full-length episodes of Love and Murder. You also get bonus content cases like this one. You get cases about love obsessions or cases with the craziest crime or serial killer corner. Like this would be a serial killer corner case. You also get whole stories, so you'll be able to get to know about us right now. Like right now, I'm actually saying this or telling this case from the comfort of a hotel room. I'm not even home. So if you want to find out why, you would go to our Patreon. You'd get behind the scenes and so much more. Right now, all of this is only half off at $5 a month. And if you subscribe now, you can stay grandfathered in even when the price changes, which is going to happen in about 1 week. 1 week, the price is going to go right back up to $10 a month. So now is the time to get into our exclusive community. Also, follow us on social media at facebook.com/relationship crime, Instagram at Love Murder Podcast. Join our Facebook fan group by searching Love and Murder fan page in Google or Facebook. Trust me, when you search, that's the first thing that comes up. Or by simply clicking on the link in the show notes below. Find our awesome merch by going to our website, www.murderandlove.com, and clicking on our shop in the menu above. I know we haven't had any updated merch recently, but that is about to change. So go there, go, go, go. And an easy and free way to help us out is by simply sharing this episode. It costs you nothing. It costs you no time and it costs you no money. Just share this episode, hit that share button, share with your friends, share with your mom, share with your dog, share with your dad, share, 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 share. And as always, we're going to remind you,
lock your doors at night.
No, it's
all love
and
no murder,
y'all. Good night.